Hello and welcome back to Gratuitous Math. So today is part 2 of the factoring trinomials by product and sum video. So if you haven't checked out the first part of factoring trinomials by product and sum, you should go and watch that video right now. I will link it in the description. So this video is really to look at the cases where you're dealing with some negatives. So in the first video, I didn't specify what to do in the case of negatives. We only looked at cases where the operation between the two terms within the brackets were additions. Now, we're going to look at two examples. So I suggest that you kind of write these down and follow along. We're going to look at this one over here, r squared minus 12r plus 35. So we're going to use our same steps. So the first step is identifying the pieces of your trinomial. So we have to find our A, our B, and our C. So A is always the one that goes with the squared term. The B is the one that goes with the exponent 1, and the C is your constant. So here in front of r squared, we do have a 1. So in this case, A is 1, B is negative 12, and C is 35. Okay, so that is the setup. Then we start with that first step is where we find the product of A and C. We do A times C. In this case, we have 1 times 35. We get 35. Second step is looking at 35 and having our little umbrella and have it rain factors. So 1 times 35 will give us 35, and 5 times 7 will give us 35. Now this is the part that I didn't specify, since the last examples were simple examples. Our factors here, there is more than just 1 times 35 that will give me 35. I can also have negative 1 times negative 35, and that will also give me positive 35. So now what we have to think about is always the plus minus of all of these factors. And what we want now is we're going to look at step 3. So we have our B, right? Our B is negative 12. So now we have to look at, we want to add up 2 of these pairs and have it give us negative 12. And the 2 that we pick, when we multiply them, it has to give us positive 35. So you have to consider the positive pairs of factors and also the negative pairs of factors. So in this case, we have positive 1 along with positive 35. We have positive 5, positive 7, and then our other options are also negative 1, negative 35, and negative 5 and negative 7. And we have to pick the ones that when we add those 2 up, it gives us negative 12. So we're going to choose negative 5 and negative 7. Since when you add those up, negative 5 plus negative 7, you get negative 12. So that's your product. And, well, not your product, sorry, your sum. Negative 5 times negative 7, that gives you positive 35. So this is your product, this is your sum. And that's the title of this method. So the negatives are quite a bit more work. There's a lot more that you have to pay attention to. But once you get the hang of it, it's quite straightforward. So same thing as before, we were taking this negative 12 and we're breaking it up into a negative 5r and a negative 7r. So we haven't changed anything. We've just rewritten that negative 12 in a different way so that we can do grouping. So now we are going to do our grouping here and here. In the first set of brackets, the only common thing is the r's. So we're going to take out one r, and we're left with one r here and a negative 5. And then here we have negative 7r, 35. Remember that the goal is for our brackets to match. So we want whatever's left in the bracket that we're going to put over here to match this. And we're going to want a positive r and a negative 5. Right now, we have a negative and a positive. So that kind of gives us a heads up that we're going to need to pull out not a positive 7, but a negative 7 in order to leave behind a positive r and a negative 5. So that type of thing will happen quite a bit, and you need to be mindful of checking your negatives and making sure that these two match at the end. So we take r and minus 7, make a bracket for that, and then r minus 5 gets its own bracket. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing, just now we're looking at this type of example. So the steps are the same. Here we have our A is 1, our B is 1, and our C is negative 42. So step 1, we have A times C, 1 times negative 42. We have negative 42. Step 2, our little factor umbrella. So we have 1, and we're going to list just the positive factors, just to make it a little simpler. 1 and 42, 2 and 21. I'm sure this is divisible by 3. 14. It's not divisible by 4. And it is divisible by 6. You get 6 and 7. So now this is where that plus minus situation really comes into play, because in this example, what you have to add up your pair that you choose, and then you also have to be able to multiply them and get back a negative 42. So these are all our options. So since when we multiply, we're getting back a negative number, that means that one of these that we choose is going to have to be positive, and then the other one is going to have to be negative. So just looking at, we get a 1 left over. And the only thing that really works here is 6 and 7. So the way that let's write step 3. So step 3, B is 1. So we know that we're going to have 6 plus 7, and now we know that one of these has to be negative. We want to be left with a positive 1. So we have to make 6 negative. So that will equal like a 1. And then negative 6 times positive 7, that will equal your negative 42. So your product and your sum. So this is what we chose, negative 6 and a positive 7. And now it's the same as before. We take our 1n and we are breaking 1n up into a negative 6n and a positive 7n. So again, we haven't changed anything. We've just rewritten one n in a way that allows us to do grouping. Now in this first bracket, the only thing in common is an n. We're left with n minus 6. And here we see that we have positive, negative. So over here, we want to be left with positive, negative. We don't need to change the signs, so we're good to just take out a positive 7. Positive 7, and we'll be left with n minus 7. Rearrange everything. N plus 7. N minus 6. So those are your two examples for some negatives. We had one example where our B was negative, one example where our C was negative. So as usual, if there's anything you need, if you're struggling with this package, feel free to leave a comment in this video. You can ask your math teacher, or you can always come by the math office and one of the math teachers will be happy to help. Okay, I will see you in the next video.